Good morning and welcome to Educator DC. My name is Varnell Nathaniel, and I have the privilege of being the Vice President of Programs at Educator DC. We are thrilled to have you here this morning to unveil research finding on the impacts, the cost, and the benefits of the DC Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund. This research, commissioned by Under 3 DC, was conducted by Clive Belfield of the City University of New York and the University of Pennsylvania, and Owen Shoshay of Mathematica. I would like to begin this morning by talking about Educator DC and our experience with pay equity. Educator DC is an early childhood education program that serves over 375 children and their families through 2 campuses and 4 child care partnerships within Ward 7 and 8 of our district. Our mission is to eliminate the opportunity gap for young children experiencing poverty and to help them develop the skills necessary for kindergarten and beyond. Achieving this mission requires high-quality program and highly qualified teachers who are well compensated. As an administrator in the early childhood field, I can say with confidence that the Pay Equity Fund has been nothing short of being transformative for us. The impact has been profound. We've seen a significant boost in our teacher retention, recruitment, and overall our morale. Before the Pay Equity Fund, we faced a stark reality. 3 of our classrooms were closed due to a nationwide teacher shortage and the effects of the pandemic. Today, thanks to the Pay Equity Fund, all of our classrooms are open, and an additional 40 children are now receiving the high quality education that they deserve. The difference is extremely clear. The teachers we've been able to hire for these classrooms have shared that they return to the early childhood field because for the first time, they are being compensated at a level that reflects their dedication, their commitment, their hard work, and their expertise. The Pay Equity Fund has made that possible, and it is truly changing lives. Both of our educators and our children that we care for and teach for each day, they receive the benefits from the Pay Equity Fund. Our teachers have dedicated their careers to nurturing and teaching our children, often with little recognition or compensation. Before the Pay Equity Fund, they did this incredible, important work, far less than what they deserved. But now, thanks to the Pay Equity Fund, they are finally earning higher salaries and are able to care for themselves and their families in ways that we all hope and dream for. As you'll hear from our panelists today, the Pay Equity Fund is a cost-effective and high-impact investment for the District of Columbia. Before we hear from the authors of this report, I would like for you to hear from a teacher herself that was a recipient of the Pay Equity Fund. So if you can please join me in clapping your hands to welcome our next speaker, Ms. Shawnetta Myers, a lead teacher here at Educator DC Parkside, who can share with you how the Pay Equity Fund has made a difference in her life.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Shawnetta Myers, and I'm grateful to be here today as I reflect on my journey in the early childhood education. Over the past 8 years, I've experienced the highs and lows of this work, also moments of joy where children reach their developmental milestones, the challenges of addressing complex family needs, also the immense responsibility we carry as educators, shaping the future of our youngest learners. But I will tell you, nothing has been feeling more significant than the moment I learned that the Pay Equity Fund was there. Well, that is here. We won't claim it's here. That is here. Finally, after years of dedication to this field and a lot of hard work, I am able to breathe a little easier, knowing that I am just teaching that I'm not just teaching because it's my passion, but now I am finally earning the higher compensation that I truly deserve. I've spent the last 8 years working here at Educator, where I've developed both personally and professionally as an educator. Along the way, I've been balancing bills, insurance, and the financial strain of making ends meet. And it comes with early childhood, being an early childhood educator. The Pay Equity Fund came at the perfect moment, right after the challenges of the pandemic, which tested all of us. I felt like it was a lifeline at the time when so many of us were struggling emotionally and financially. For years, I've worked tirelessly, always putting my students first, but now I can finally see the fruits of my labor. I was recently promoted to the lead teacher of Classroom 120, which you see, here at Educator, because I've earned my bachelor's degree and now I'm making $75,000 a year. I feel as though the Pay Equity Fund has financially aligned my salary with my work. As much as I love this work, we all know that the passion alone isn't enough. The emotional and physical toll of teaching young minds and young children is immense. Every day, we pour out ourselves into the lives of these children, teaching, guiding, leading, and supporting, and loving them. It requires a level of patience, energy, and commitment that passion alone can't sustain. It needs to be valued. And today, thanks to the Pay Equity Fund, that value is finally reflecting our salaries as educators. I feel incredibly fortunate to be a teacher in the District of Columbia, where early childhood educators are compensated as the skilled professionals that we are, alongside our colleagues in K through 12 education as well. This is not just a win for teachers. It is a win for our children who deserve the best education and the best educators. It's a win for our communities who will benefit from the investments that we make in our next generation. I am so proud to be an early childhood educator now, and thanks to this program, I can continue this important work without having to sacrifice my own financial well-being. This is a turning point for me, and I am filled with hope for what the future holds. Not just for me, but for all of us who teach, who care, and who shape the minds of the future every single day. Thank you.
I want to thank you so much, Shanetta, for sharing your personal experience with the pay equity. It's so important that these policies and research conversations are grounded in real life experiences of the people that they impact. Next up, please join me in welcoming Ms. Sierra Barbara. She is a board member and the Chief Strategy Officer for the DC Early Learning Collaborative. She served under four mayors, oh my goodness, as the administrator of the District of Columbia's Department of Human Services, and is an expert in early childhood education and a member of the Under 3 DC Coalition. Welcome, Ms. Barbara.
Thank you for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Sia Barbara Kamara, and I am the Chief Strategy Officer of the DC Early Learning Collaborative. And you already heard that I served under 4 mayors here in the District of Columbia. And during that time, I was responsible for building a citywide system of high-quality early care and education programs. I'm a veteran of many political battles, where I worked across the city with several of you here in the audience to really in response to competing community interests, to build support for the care and education of our youngest citizens. I'm pleased to be with you today to share some insights into where we've been as a community of practice and how we should proceed from here. We should start by using this new critical data on the pay equity fund benefits, costs, and economic returns to advance our goals of promoting the idea of early care and education being a part of the public good, similar to K-12 education. We plan to accomplish this by building among our multiple stakeholders public knowledge, public will, and public action in support of early care and education as the foundation for success in school and in life, and therefore deserving of the same level of funding and concern as the traditional public schools, as well as the charter public schools. The district has always been a pioneer in early childhood education. In 1964, we became a pilot test site for the National Head Start program, which is 60 years old this year. In 1972, we were one of the first school districts in the country to offer pre-K to 4-year-olds in the public school setting. Fast forwarding to the formation of the Universal School Readiness Stakeholders Group in 2003, which led to the passage of the Pre-K for All legislation in 2008, and then the passage of the Birth to 3 for All Act 10 years later in 2018. In other words, DC has been at the forefront of this national movement for more than 50 years. One thing we've learned along the way is that children cannot be prepared for success in school and in life without being taught and guided by highly qualified teachers with degrees and credentials who are also highly competent and highly compensated. Stephanie's remarks speak to the essentiality of the Pay Equity Fund, how it is stabilizing child care, and why the data Owen and Clive will present today are so important to our community going forward. We live in unprecedented times that call for unprecedented, bodacious acts of courage on behalf of the district's youngest citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sia Barbara. And we know that you're going to be at the forefront because your expertise and wisdom has brought us this far, and it will continue to bring us further. Now let's zoom into a particular aspect. Let's hear from Ms. Audrey Kausman. Audrey is the Senior Policy Analysis for the Early Childhood at DC Action and a member of the Under 3 DC Coalition. She holds a master's in education leadership, organization, and entrepreneurship from the Harvard Graduate School of Education and has worked in education policy, advocating for high-quality education on all levels, from early childhood to higher education. Prior to her policy work, she also worked at DC Preschool, where she partners with early educators, families, and young children to support child development. Audrey is the author of the Under 3 DC Brief, just released today, entitled Public Investments in Early Childhood Education, Good for Educators, Families, and the Economy, which she will present on today. Thank you so much, Audrey.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Audrey Castleman, and I'm a senior policy analyst with DC Action and the Under 3 DC Coalition. Thank you, Ronell and Sia, for your remarks, and thank you, Sharnetta, for sharing your story. It's one of many that show the real impact of the Pay Equity Fund on educators' lives. Through my work with the Under 3 DC Coalition, I hear stories like this from educators across the district. Stories of achieving financial stability for the first time, of being able to save, and even realizing the goal of home ownership. It is clear that the Pay Equity Fund has profound value for educators, and importantly, plays a critical role in addressing systemic inequities for a workforce that is predominantly Black and brown and has been historically underpaid despite their critical work of building infant and toddler brains. The Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund is a first of its kind, publicly funded compensation program meant to bring early educator salaries up to parity of the salaries of teachers of older children. It was implemented in 2 stages. In phase 1, OSSI provided direct pay supplements to educators, $10,000 to $14,000 for full-time educators and $5,000 to $7,000 for part-time educators, while a task force developed recommendations for a more permanent structure. In phase 2, child development facilities that employ early childhood educators receive funding based on a formula and must use those funds to meet OSSI's minimum salary requirements for educators. This analysis we're discussing today covers the final year of phase 1, from October 2022 to September 2023. But as we all know, in tight budget years, in uncertain political climates, we need to look at the numbers and understand the broader economic value that the Pay Equity Fund brings to our city. The research we commissioned from Clive and Owen helps us to do exactly that. Their findings are impressive. I'll let them share more about the benefits of the Pay Equity Fund for families, child development facilities, and educators themselves. One thing is clear. This unprecedented investment strengthens the foundation of early childhood education, a critical period that, as research shows time and time again, shares children's lifelong health, wellness, academic, and economic outcomes. The Pay Equity Fund enables a more consistent, high-quality childcare system by supporting a stable and skilled workforce, which is absolutely essential for children's development and success. For families in the district facing barriers to affording high-quality early childhood education, the Pay Equity Fund is especially meaningful. Nearly every child development program that welcomes families with childcare subsidies, which help them pay for childcare, also participates in the Pay Equity Fund. This means that the benefits of both the subsidy program and the Pay Equity Fund can build on one another, ensuring that children and families with low income have access to the best possible early learning opportunities. Given the relationship between economic inequality and racial discrimination, these 2 programs combined are an important strategy for righting historic wrongs and setting our children up for a more just and prosperous future. Today, we know from both educators like Sharnetta and the research before us that the Pay Equity Fund works. It strengthens the early childhood educator workforce, it helps families find stable and high-quality early learning programs, and it ensures that our youngest children receive the nurturing care that they need to thrive. As a community, we have an obligation to keep this momentum going. The district's investment in the Pay Equity Fund is simply too important to be held back by political shifts or budget uncertainties. When we invest in the Pay Equity Fund, we invest in children, in families, and in the future and present day of our workforce and economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for sharing that excellent overview, especially on how the Pay Equity Fund strengthens the foundation of early childhood education. Now, please join me in welcoming Owen Shoshay. He is a researcher with Mathematica and is a developmental psychologist with an extensive training in statistical methodologies. He received his PhD in human development and public policy from Georgetown University. Please welcome him as he talks a little bit about his effectiveness of public programs and policies that serve young children. As the director of Mathematica, the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund Impact and Cost Effectiveness Study, and here he is to present his findings to us. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone, how are you? Good to see everybody. We have just the right number of chairs. Okay, so I'll also mention partnership with the Bezos Family Foundation and the wonderful organizations here today. Mathematica is conducting the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund Impact and Cost Effectiveness, or PEF Impact, study to inform discussions about this pioneering initiative. PEF Impact is focused on understanding the effectiveness of the program, which can be understood both in terms of impact, right? So what are the benefits of the program, as well as public investment, right? So does the economic value of these benefits justify what it costs, right, to produce them? So I'll begin by presenting our findings on program impacts before my colleague, Professor Clyde Belfield, shares our findings on cost effectiveness. So I'll just reiterate that thus far our research is focused on the first iteration of the fund, where payments were delivered directly to educators, right, outside of employer payrolls. So as part of the PEF impact study, we're also continuing to evaluate the program as it's being implemented today. So we consider several benefits of the Pay Equity Fund in our research, including for early childhood educators, their facilities, and the families they serve, which are nicely summarized in this lovely, colorful poster. So for educators, greater economic, personal, and professional well-being may reduce work absences and increase the amount of time they stay in their role, which will then lead to more work experience and job skills. Higher wages also mean that fewer educators need to rely on public assistance programs. Subsidized health insurance may also improve educators' health, lower their healthcare expenditures as a result, and reduce medical debt. For early childhood facilities, when staff stay in their roles for longer, as most folks in this room probably know, we refer to this as job retention. Administrators can focus less on recruiting, onboarding, and training new staff, right? Similarly, fewer absences also reduces the need for administrators to find staff coverage, right? So this accumulates benefits for program operations. We also consider benefits to the consumers of these services, DC's families with young children, mine included. So higher pay and benefits may not only help retain existing workers, right, but also help to recruit new ones, both of which are important in a sector with well-documented staffing shortages, particularly as we kind of emerge from the pandemic. A healthier labor supply means that facilities can offer more slots, which increases access to care for families. Finally, by increasing educators' work experience and job skills, promoting stable relationships between educators and both families and coworkers, and improving the ways that facilities operate, the Pay Equity Fund can improve the quality of care that families receive. Today, I'll share our findings again on the impacts of the program, focusing on this final group of benefits, specifically those that accrue to families via the Health of DC's early childhood labor market. This includes the impacts of the Pay Equity Fund on the supply of childcare in the district, including possible effects both on the number of educators and the number of facilities. To explore these questions, we used federal labor market data collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Just as a clinical trial, right, for a new medication compares outcomes between patients who do and don't receive the treatment, estimating impacts of a public policy or program needs a control group, right? That is a counterfactual that represents what would have happened in DC without the Pay Equity Fund. Of course, this isn't something we'll ever know, right? So we need to approximate it using statistical methods. In this study, we used what's called a synthetic control group method, to produce a synthetic version of DC, which is a weighted combination of several other areas all across the country. So in the 4 years leading up to the launch of the Pay Equity Fund, our synthetic DC looks just like the real thing in terms of its labor market, both in the early childhood sector and across other sectors. In this poster behind me, right here, we can see this in terms of the number of early childhood educators specifically. The solid blue line shows the number of educators in DC, right? And the dashed red line shows the number of educators in our synthetic DC. Before the launch of the Pay Equity Fund in 2022, indicated here by our yellow line, DC and its control have the same number of educators over time, right? Those two lines overlap. This includes both before and after the start of the pandemic, which, as we can see here, of course, led to a sharp decline in the early childhood workforce across the country, right? Quite dramatically. So to determine the benefits of the program, we can compare the characteristics of DC's early childhood sector with this estimate of outcomes without the program, right? We found that by the end of the 2023 fiscal year, the Pay Equity Fund had increased employment in the early childhood sector by 219 educators, or about 7% relative to the levels in the counterfactual. This was one of the very largest impacts across all counties in the nation, which to us suggests statistical significance, right? Or that it's sort of very unlikely that we're seeing this difference purely due to chance. We did not estimate significant impacts on the number of early childhood facilities, however, which led us to believe that the program's positive impacts on early childhood labor supply was concentrated within existing businesses. This is important, right, because it suggests that in less than 2 years, the Pay Equity Fund helped existing local facilities to increase staffing, again, amidst well-documented early childhood labor shortages. Finally, as it relates back to families, which Clive will also discuss more in a moment, we estimated that this 7% increase in the number of educators in the district means an increase in nearly 1,500 additional childcare slots. Together, these findings suggest that large increases in educator wages and subsidized benefits can effectively boost early childhood labor supply, which in turn increases access to these services for families who rely on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen, for sharing that compelling presentation on the impact of the Pay Equity Fund. Here at Educator DC, we find it particularly interesting and validating that the research really shows an increase in our job retention thanks to the Pay Equity Fund. For too long, a lot of early childhood programs were struggling to recruit and retain teachers, and the Pay Equity Fund is a way of stabilizing our workforce. Now, we're fortunate to have Mr. Clive Belfield, a professor of economics at Queens College City University of New York. He received his PhD in economics, and he is the author of 3 books: The Price We Pay, The Economics and Social Costs of Inadequate Education. He has authored numerous articles on the economics of education and has served as a consultant to the World Bank of the U.S. Department of Education and the British government. As a well-known non-for-profit foundation and education think tank, he has also conducted and analyzed the research today. Let's please welcome Clive Belfield.
Thank you so much. So I'm an economist, deep breath. Sia is right. These programs are extra investments in educators for the public good. So we're looking at this for what this does for the public good. And we're gonna say that we know that this has good consequences for educators, for families, but how big are these consequences? And does the size of the benefits outweigh the costs? That's where the economists come in. We're going to turn all this into dollars and see what it costs and what benefits we get in dollars. And the framework is the one that Owen outlined. We've got benefits to educators. They get paid more, productivity goes up, absenteeism goes down, skills go up. We've got benefits to the facilities. Recruitment is easier, retention is easier, managing staff is easier, and we've got a lot of benefits to families in terms of extra places that Owen has established and higher quality care for existing places. So it's not just the extra places, but also the care that children get across all of the educators who receive the Pay Equity Fund. We're going to go to the research and we're going to say, how much does extra pay reduce absenteeism? We're going to go to the research. How much does extra pay reduce recruitment costs? And we're going to add all that up and we're going to turn it into dollars and compare it to the costs. So and we're doing this for the 2023 version, just to fix it in our heads. We're doing it for the 2023 version, which is about 4,000 educators, so a big program, and about 1,000 of them get health care as well. So when we look at the cost of the program is about $54 million for a year of the program. But we get 3 big benefits of the program. We get the benefits to the educators in terms of their skills and productivity and reduced absenteeism and financial security from having health care, which, as we all know, is a big stressor on your life if you don't have health care, as well as financial security. Also, medical debt is a big problem in the US if you don't have health insurance. So there are big gains for the educators. There are gains for the facilities because there is a huge literature on recruitment and retention of early childhood educators. It's huge. And what does it say? Recruitment and retention is a big problem caused by low pay and sometimes conditions, but primarily low pay. The Pay Equity Fund pretty much solves that problem. It's a substantial amount of extra money which reduces absenteeism, increases productivity. That all adds up to childcare facilities, child development facilities, which are much more efficient and much more productive. The big beneficiaries are the families, not just the extra places that Owen mentions, the 219 educators who are affected, 7% of the educators, but also all the families who are now in classrooms with great teachers. There's a lot of literature on the benefits of early education, a lot of literature going back many decades. We can turn all that into dollars too. So, I do the calculations. The cost of the program is about $54 million for 1 year of the program. A 1 year version of the benefits is about $66 million, $66.8 million. Very simply, the difference between those two is $12 million, or a rate of return of about 23% for a 1 year. Now, 23% is a great rate of return. The last time I went to my bank and asked for a rate of return of 23%, they showed me the door. It's a great return. It's a very high return. It's probably a conservative estimate because we don't include some benefits, and we say, look, it's just what do we get out of 1 year of this program? Not what do we get out of consistently investing in educators, but what do we get out of 1 year of the program? So it's probably a conservative return on investment. But it shows that this is an investment for the public good that pays off from a public perspective. So in that sense, we've demonstrated, as not all government investments do, we've demonstrated that this makes economic sense as well as sense from an equity perspective. Details of the calculations in the report, happy to talk more about each individual calculation, but the broad conclusion is that it's called the Pay Equity Fund, but economists would be perfectly happy to call it the Pay Efficiency Fund, because it makes sense from a dollars financial investment analyst perspective. Brief summary of our research. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Clive, for sharing your research findings on the cost efficiency of the Pay Equity Fund. And I am sure I am not the only one here that is thrilled that we now have evidence on the program's return on investment, 23%. So I would like you to join me in welcoming Ms. Ebony Rose Thompson, the Ward 7 representative on the State Board of Education. She works in education, investing in efforts to build educational equality and advance policies to ensure public education delivers excellence to all. With more than a decade of experience in supporting education, government, and social impact organizations, she is here today to share her perspectives on the importance of investing in early childhood education. Please welcome Ms. Ebony Rose.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
If we've not met, my name is Ebony Rose Thompson. I'm actually not unfamiliar to Educator specifically because my mom used to teach right next door at Neville Thomas. And there was sometimes folks who know me know that I don't always say my mom. Sometimes I refer to her as T. Thompson because we used to work in the same school building once upon a time. And it doesn't really work out if you're trying to get someone's attention and you're like, hey, Mom. The kids won't take you seriously. And so at that point in time, I was actually running a early childhood home visiting program. And we served some students from Educator. What that taught me was, because my job is always straddled a little bit between local and national. I learned a lot about like what challenges there are, not just in DC, but across the country for kids. And one of the things we figured out in DC was that people weren't trying to make it out of DC. People were just holding on to like stay. Like our challenge as DC natives, our challenge as Washingtonians is not always trying to make it out. A lot of times it's trying to make it back. Sometimes it's just trying to make it from day to day to stay here. And when I was maybe about, I think I was 10 when my mom graduated from college. I was at her college graduation. I was at her graduations for her master's. I was also there in the back of the classrooms when they would try out, their lesson plans on us. And I remember my mom saying to me, wow, now as a teacher, this is the least amount of money I've ever made. Mm-hmm. She said that to me because before my mom was a teacher, she actually was an electrician. Mm-hmm. And so you can make pretty good money as an electrician. I have an uncle that's still an electrician. I can tell you about all the opportunities that pathway affords, but she wanted to be a teacher. My mom loves being a teacher. When I tell you that she retired herself, that lasted about 2 years. I remember saying to her, hey, T. Thompson, do you really want to retire or do you need a break? And she said, no, I'm ready to retire. And then I looked up and she said, I'm going for a job interview. And she was hired on that Friday. She went to school on that Monday and she was on a field trip by Wednesday. That's how much my mom loves being a teacher. But I know that just like in our K through 12 education system, and in DC, we start at pre-K. We now are all the way down to pre-K 3. The only reason my mom can continue to be a teacher is that we've increased our pay for teachers. We are now trying to make sure we're doing that for more and more of our teachers, of our educators that also teach the little teeniest people. And that matters for them too, because in a lot of ways, those are people who look like me. They're brown women, they're Black women, they're women who not only are raising our children in their classrooms, they're raising their own kids at home. And it is expensive out here. And so the least we can do is do right by our families to make sure that they're able to hold on in DC, just like I was able to, just like my mom was able to. And so I'm grateful, even though I am not an economist, I can't give you the dollars and cents and the return on investment. I can tell you why these dollars make sense. And so thank you for everyone who's done this work. Thank you for breaking the return on investment down, because sometimes we need that. We need folks to say, no, this thing is worthwhile. Because when we make budgets, we're always making trade-offs. They're not just wish lists. And so thank you for explaining to us, all of us, why not we just have a sense of why this is important, or why we have a sense of the impact this makes, but why these dollars make sense, not just for this year, but for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ebony Rose, for speaking on the behalf of all educators and even your mother today. So I really want to thank all of our panelists today for such an informative discussion. But now we would like to turn it over to you, the audience. We would love to hear from you. Do you have any questions for our panelists here? If so, just please feel free. We're in school, we can always raise our hand.
I've got a question. How would you anticipate your findings changing if you were to take a look at how the pay equity fund is now implemented with payments to child care providers and directors that then go directly into paychecks versus the direct payment model that you studied for year one?
Yeah. Well, we could maybe theorize. I think it's likely that they do change. As Clive mentioned, even just by virtue of sort of gains over time, you may see the rate of investment change, even if the program implementation hadn't changed. There are likely changes to future returns based on whether the program is expected to be permanent versus transitory. Regarding specific implementation features, you can probably theorize a lot of different things. Right, there are incentives for, or sort of to enable or to help, right, facilities, with higher rates of serving more children funded by subsidies to participate, right? So that may have implications for sort of social returns. Of course, there are, more requirements for facilities now to engage with the policy, which could have an influence on program operations and associated costs and values, economic returns. So yeah, I think we expect that it very likely will change for a variety of reasons, both related to implementation and passage of time, and future research should certainly pay attention to that.
Are there any other questions?
So I'm just wondering whether there are a number of states and not many localities who have done some sort of increased pay structures. They've not what DC has done. But I'm just wondering if there's any comparison with any of them in terms of rate of return and just public good in general in terms of the value. Have you seen any, have you been able to compare with any or look at any of those?
So you're right, there are programs in there developing and changing, but we're the first. We're the first as far as we know so far. Nobody else has done a return on investment analysis of these types of funds. We're pioneering this, and it's important that we do it. I think it's important that the other states do it too. But so far, the evidence we have is really about the underlying framework of recruitment and retention is such a problem that raising pay makes sense. But the specific programs, to my knowledge, nobody has done a return on investment for specific programs in other states.
I'll take it one step further. In order to do a return on investment, you need that first step of estimating the benefits just separate from the dollars, right? And that literature is also very, very thin. There's some work in certain settings focused on different types of initiatives, such as incentives, right, for staying in your position for longer and so on. But that's, to our knowledge, that's also a very thin area of literature, so there's much to be done.
I know it's probably something we get super into the weeds, but I am super curious about just how you approach calculating the benefits around quality specifically. So I don't know if you can say anything about that at a high level.
Sure. So quality is a very, imprecise term. It's got lots of different ways of thinking about it. You can think about it in terms of the credentials of the educators. You can think about it in terms of staff child-teacher ratios. We think about it in terms of how much parents are willing to pay for different amounts of quality. So, if you're trying to buy just the most basic level of care, how much does that cost? Versus if you're willing to pay and able to pay a lot more for a higher quality program. So we do it that way around in terms of expenditures by families. As you say, there are lots of different ways to do it because quality it's quite a it's open to interpretation what counts as quality. There are lots of different metrics, lots of different ways to measure it. So in order to put money values on it, we have to say, well, how much are people willing to pay for quality care? And we have information on that, national information as well as DC information.
And then I'll just ask one last question. So we know that the pay equity has moved into its second phase. How can we expect these findings to transfer into this new phase?
I'll go, I guess, my response to that. Anne's question. Only to say that there are a number of factors that will influence the economic returns of the program, including whether it's anticipated to be permanent or transitory. Of course, the way that it's implemented. I guess one of the other theoretical reasons why the economic returns might change, I didn't mention before, would be that the amount of wage increase that educators are receiving will change, right? For some it will go up, for some it will go down, for some it may go away altogether. So that's important to pay attention to, and there's a lot of great teams, including folks that have been here in attendance, that are focused on some of those sorts of questions. So all I'll say is, we need to continue to study this important program to quantify those changes.
Yeah, I mean, I can add as well. We would typically think that the benefits would grow as you keep investing in the program. Just very straightforwardly, if you give me health insurance for a week, that's nice. But if you give it to me for 52 weeks, I can plan my health status, anything that comes up. I get much more security from knowing the program is there, rather than always thinking, is it going to be taken away? Is it going to be added to? Is it going to be taken away? Is it going to be changed? It's obvious for health insurance, but it's also obvious for your pay. How can you budget to invest in a career if your wages keep going up and down?
Thank you. So I want to thank you for all of your questions and for joining us today. And a special thanks to Under 3 DC, Mathematica, to Clive and Owen for your work on this research. We hope that the findings shared with you today will help demonstrate to both the public and policymakers just how impactful and worthwhile the Pay Equity Fund truly is.